So, Umesh, what's the 50,000 feet view? Is there a higher probability of a downdraft, or do flows indicate that India might? I mean, even if India does better, will India still succumb to pressure?
Okay, no. Thanks for the question. And there is, given that it's at 50,000 feet, there is a lot of cross current going on, right? So let me answer the short question, which is that do I see a downdraft from here? The answer is yes. Now, how does it all play out, right? Because it's not simple. Because what tends to happen is that we tend to focus on one headline, but it's actually a mix of everything that's going on. Look, let's start with the positives, right? So one is that relatively, as compared to any other time in history, especially if you look at what happened during the taper tantrum of 2013, India's fiscal situation is much better. External vulnerability is much lower. On a relative sense, if you see Indian companies much better capitalized, banks are in good shape, right? So in that context, is India relatively better? Answer is yes. Having said that, what happens is that of course, there is one very big factor, which is that since 2016, we've seen a continuous inflow of mature retail domestic money coming into the Indian markets, which has actually gone through a lot of ups and downs, but remained fairly steady and in fact on an upward trajectory. That's actually a very big sign of maturity. If someone had asked me in 2016 that we'll see $50 billion of outflows from Indian markets, from FPIs, and the market is not going to budge, I would not have believed it myself. So in that context, India in a relative sense seems quite good. But at the same point in time, what happens is that the storm is actually of a much larger scale and is actually happening at a global level. The first, I think, is the fact that we believe incrementally there is going to be a problem for long duration assets. What I mean by that is that if you look at the Fed, okay, rates are going up. I think there has been consistent negative surprise on that. The second is that, we called, at HDFC Securities, our research team got it right. We said that inflation is going to become a problem. It is going to last longer, which means the fight against inflation lasts longer, which is what has started to play out as well. Now, in this context, what we believe will happen is that rates stay higher for longer. That creates a problem because you see what happened to the dollar index. It's at 114, 115 now. That's a serious headwind for all emerging markets. Right? On top of that is the big elephant in the room, which not a lot of people are talking about, which is the fact that there is quantitative tightening. And while it started in June, for the first 3 months, you had not seen any effect of that. The last 2 months have actually accelerated. And to some extent, you can see the liquidity getting sucked out from our emerging markets, including India as well. That is the second part of the problem. The third is that if you put all this together, now one big new factor which has started to play out is that the coordination that we were used to among central banks globally, which started in 2007-8, when they started to fight the global financial crisis, are broken down. So if you see, China is on its own trip, the Japanese are on their own trip, the European Union is facing its own problems, the entire country of UK is going through its own issues with the change of chancellor and whatnot. And then the Fed has its own agenda, and so does India. So what we are seeing is that volatility remains very high. Now, to pay for all this, you should typically have a market which is one standard deviation below mean, which is when you start to get comfort. But the market's actually the other way around. It is more than one standard deviation above mean. Would you pay this kind of entry multiples to enter the market long term? It feels like that's not the right number. So while we believe in staying invested into markets, we don't think that this is absolutely the right entry point.